But to lose one of my brothers on top of that was almost too much to bear. I was filled with sadness until I noticed something odd. At the funeral, Marcus seemed almost happy. It was so incredibly unsettling, and it made my blood boil. "Marcus, you ghoul! Why are you smiling at a time like this?"
Well, I guess this means Grandpa's fortune will be split 2 ways now. It's what Tom would have wanted.
I had no words. All I could do was bite my tongue and do my best not to cause a scene. His callousness made my stomach churn. I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. A few days later, I visited Marcus's house to confront him. That's when I saw it. His car parked in the driveway. The front bumper was badly damaged, and it was the same brand of car the police had seen in the security footage. My heart raced as I snapped photos. I took the evidence to the police. My name is Reggie Mack, and my life has always been defined by my family. I have 2 brothers, Tom and Marcus. Tom's my rock, my confidant, the kind of brother who would do anything for you and expect nothing in return. Marcus, on the other hand, is complicated. If Tom is the heart of our family, Marcus is the thorn that digs into it. Tom and I always got along well, even as kids. We'd spend our summers building forts in the woods, riding bikes, and staying up late talking about our dreams. Marcus, though, always seemed to feel like the world owed him something. I remember one Christmas when we were kids. Dad had worked overtime for weeks to afford us some nice gifts. I got a Lego set, Tom got a remote control car, and Marcus got the exact gaming console he'd been begging for all year. But instead of being grateful, he sulked.
"This isn't the deluxe version. I told you I wanted the deluxe version." "Marcus, we couldn't afford it. Be thankful for what you got." "Thankful? For this? You don't care about me at all."
"Marcus, what's the big deal? You got what you wanted."
"You moron, you just don't understand. This version of it is garbage. None of the kids at school will be impressed unless I get the deluxe version. Do you think I want to be seen as a loser like you and Tom?"
That was Marcus in a nutshell. Selfish, entitled, and impossible to please. Over the years, his behavior didn't improve. I remember another incident when we were teenagers. Grandpa gave us each a small allowance for helping out on his farm. Tom saved his share, I used mine to buy new sneakers, and Marcus spent his almost immediately on snacks and video games. A week later, he came to me.
"Reggie, can I borrow some money? I'll pay you back next week."
"You already spent your allowance?" "That was supposed to last the whole month."
"Yeah, well, I had things I needed to buy. Come on, don't be a jerk, you've got plenty left. Just help me out."
"Sorry, Marcus. You should have budgeted better. I have plans for the rest of the money."
"You're such a selfish prick. I hope you break your leg while running around wearing those new sneakers you bought. By the way, they make you look stupid. I mean, they aren't even a popular brand."
It wasn't just about money. Marcus always demanded more attention, more recognition, more everything. Tom and I learned early on to temper our expectations when it came to him. Then there was the time Tom got accepted into his dream college. We threw him a surprise party to celebrate, and everyone was so proud. Well, everyone except Marcus.
Oh, great. Another Tom is amazing moment. When is it my turn to be celebrated?
"Marcus, this is Tom's achievement. Be happy for him. When you get accepted to college, we'll have a party for you as well."
Why should I? It's not like he's even going to a good school. Besides, he'll probably flunk out because he is such an idiot. I can't imagine why they even accepted someone as stupid as him.
"Marcus, how can you speak about your brother that way?"
He stormed off, leaving everyone feeling awkward. That's just who Marcus was. A black hole of resentment, sucking the joy out of every room he entered. Sadly, he has always been that way. Even when we grew up and moved out, he still stayed the same. Nothing ever could make him act normal. It was Marcus's world, and we all just had the privilege of living in it. At any rate, time sped on by, and one day we got some terrible news. Our grandfather announced to the family that he had been diagnosed with cancer. He'd always been the cornerstone of our family, a self-made man who worked hard to give his children and grandchildren opportunities. He worked so hard, in fact, that he had amassed quite a large fortune. He took the money that he earned from his farm and invested it every year, and he had made himself quite wealthy as a result. When he called us to his bedside, we knew it was serious.
"I don't have much time left, boys. When I go, everything I've worked for will be split equally among you 3. I've already spoken to your parents, and they agree that it is the best choice since they are doing well enough on their own. I trust you'll honor my legacy and look out for each other.
Of course, Grandpa. Thank you for trusting us.
We won't let you down.
Well, about that, I've been thinking. Since I've had a harder time than these two, maybe I should get a bigger share. Marcus, I've made my decision. My wealth will be split evenly. It's final.
The look on Marcus's face was pure indignation. Both Tom and I could tell that Marcus was not thrilled that he would have to share the inheritance at all. Over the next few weeks, he started planting seeds of discontent.
Reggie, you don't even need the money. You've got a good job. Why not let me take a bigger share?
Because Grandpa wanted it split equally. That's what he wanted. Besides, I could really use the money.
You're so selfish, Reggie. I've always known it.
Selfish how? For crying out loud, Marcus, why can't you ever be satisfied with anything?
Because unlike you, I'm not a loser. I deserve it more than either you or Tom.
He started harassing Tom too, calling him daily to demand that he give up part of his inheritance. Tom, however, wasn't as kind as I was, and he told him off more than once.
Come on, Tom, be reasonable. You don't even have kids. What do you need all that money for?
Marcus, it's not about need. It's about honoring Grandpa's wishes. And if you don't like it, then you can take a long walk off a short pier.
You'll regret this, Tom.
Then, the unthinkable happened. One rainy evening, I got a call from the police. They told me that there had been a terrible accident and that I needed to come over right away.
Mr. Mack, I'm sorry to inform you that your brother Tom was killed in a hit-and-run accident.
You can't be serious. Do you have any suspects?
At the moment, no, but we are investigating some leads, I promise you.
Grief consumed me. Tom was the glue that held our family together, and now he was gone. It was bad enough that our grandfather was ill and would likely die soon, but to lose one of my brothers on top of that was almost too much to bear. I was filled with sadness until I noticed something odd. At the funeral, Marcus seemed almost happy. It was so incredibly unsettling, and it made my blood boil. Marcus, you ghoul! Why are you smiling at a time like this?
Well, I guess this means Grandpa's fortune will be split 2 ways now. It's what Tom would have wanted.
I had no words. All I could do was bite my tongue and do my best not to cause a scene. His callousness made my stomach churn. I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. A few days later, I visited Marcus's house to confront him. That's when I saw it. His car parked in the driveway. The front bumper was badly damaged, and it was the same brand of car the police had seen in the security footage. My heart raced as I snapped photos. I took the evidence to the police. I can't believe I'm saying this, but I think my brother was involved in the hit and run that killed my other brother Tom.
We'll investigate this. Thank you for coming forward. To be honest, we suspected that he might have been involved. This helps our case quite a bit.
I was too upset to drive, and so I decided to walk home from the police station. While walking home that evening, I couldn't shake the unease. That's when I heard it, a car engine roaring behind me. I don't know where the urge came from, but I suddenly felt the need to jump off to the side. I dove out of the way just in time as Marcus's car swerved, smashing into a wall. Had I not jumped, though, he would have run me over and pinned me between his car and the wall. Fueled by anger, I ran over, yanked him from the wreckage, and let my fists fly. You piece of crap! You killed Tom, and now you're trying to kill me?
You have no proof.
Your car is literally pinned to a wall where I was just standing. How dumb do you think I am?
Well, you shouldn't have gone to the police.
Rage filled me as I kept punching Marcus until he was unconscious. By the time that the police arrived, I had managed to wipe the blood from my knuckles and then played dumb. I knew that they could tell that his wounds hadn't been inflicted by the accident, but they pretended that they had. I can only assume that they were just glad that it hadn't been a second hit and run, and that he had been caught.
Looks like he got banged up pretty bad in the crash.
Yeah, the crash was rough.
Yep. Good thing though, or else he might have fled the scene again.
The lead detective winked at me and smiled. It was clear that they knew what actually happened. They didn't ask any more questions though, and Marcus was arrested for attempted murder and charged with Tom's death after the evidence came through. Our grandfather was devastated when he learned the truth, but he wasn't really that surprised. No one in the family was. Not after the way that Marcus was acting at Tom's funeral.
I'm cutting Marcus out of my will entirely. He's no grandson of mine. Yes, I think that is for the best, Dad.
I can't believe he could be such a monster.
Marcus was sentenced to prison, and our family disowned him. From what I have heard, he isn't doing well in prison. His bad attitude keeps getting him in trouble with the other inmates. Judging by the letters he sends from time to time, I think he spends a lot of time in the infirmary from getting beaten up. Although he mails the family often, no one ever writes back, and no one ever goes to visit him. As far as we're concerned, he is dead to us. When Grandpa eventually passed away months later, he left everything to me. But keeping the entire fortune didn't feel right. I used a portion of the inheritance to create the Tom Mack Foundation, offering scholarships to underprivileged students. It's my way of honoring Tom and ensuring his legacy lives on. Looking back, I've learned that family isn't about blood. It's about the people who stand by you. Tom may be gone, but through the foundation, his kindness and generosity will continue to touch lives for years to come. And as for Marcus, when he gets out, he better not come looking for me, because if he does, then I'll beat him up even worse than the last time. Thanks for watching.
You don't have to keep lying. I'm going to leave you out here to starve to death. It will be slow and painful, and once I know you are dead, I will bury you out here, and no one will ever know what happened to you.
And with that, she left me tied up in the cabin. Hi there, my name is Cassandra, and I have had to go through quite the ordeal. I had been married to my husband Eric for several years. We were introduced to each other through mutual friends, and we instantly fell in love with each other. Things were going really well, and it wasn't long until we started dating and eventually got engaged. We were very happy, but both of us knew that we wanted to wait until we were both properly established in our careers before marriage. He was in school to become an engineer while I was in business school, and spent a lot of time studying the stock market. Soon after we both graduated, Eric was able to find a job with a very large firm. His starting salary was very impressive, but we chose to keep renting the same small apartment so that we could save up and buy a house when we were truly ready. Sadly, I wasn't so lucky though, but I was determined to help out as much as I could, and so I got a job at a restaurant as a server to help with the bills. Around that time, Eric wanted us to introduce each other to our parents. He figured it was way past time for us to do so, and I completely agreed. Although, after I met his parents, I was rather sure that we had made a terrible mistake.
Mom and Dad, this is Cassandra, my fiancée.
Hello there, Cassandra. It's nice to meet you.
Yes, and it's very nice to meet you as well.
So tell me, Cassandra, where do you work?
Well, right now I'm just working at a restaurant, but I have plans to do something much more interesting soon.
Really? Eric, is this really the woman that you want to marry? Some sleazy waitress?
Mom, Cassandra isn't a sleazy waitress. For your information, she graduated from business school. She's only working as a waitress because she wants to contribute to our bills. With my new job, she could just stay home and do nothing, but that isn't the kind of person that she is.
She certainly doesn't sound very impressive to me. She sounds like a freeloader.
The rest of the night was much of the same, and by the time that we went home, I hated my future mother-in-law. Eric promised me that her words didn't matter to him, and that he knew that I was going to do great things with my life, and even if I didn't, that he would still love me. His father had been very warm, though, and that did make the whole encounter much more bearable at least. After a few months, though, I was growing tired of how Eric's mother was treating me. She would call him every other day and bad-mouth me to him. She would tell him that I was going to steal all of his money and that he needed to leave me as soon as possible, or else I would leave him broke, penniless, and depressed. It got so bad that he started letting her calls go to voicemail just so that he wouldn't have to listen to her. I was so sick of her constant abuse. It made me feel like such a complete loser. And so I asked Eric if it would be okay if I took some of the money I made from waitressing and invested it into the stock market. He told me that he completely supported me doing so. So after a couple weeks of analyzing several dozen companies, I picked 3 that had potential and invested my entire paycheck in them. 1 week later, I had more than doubled my initial investment, and I then took that money and reinvested it into several companies that I liked, and sure enough, the next week I had quadrupled my investment. I began picking more companies and holding them for varying amounts of time. Some I lost money on, but the majority of them earned me quite a bit of money. Before long, I had made more investing in the stock market than Eric had made in the last 2 years. We were so excited, and Eric was incredibly proud of me.
Honey, I knew that you would do well. But I never dreamed that you would do this well so quickly. We have more than enough to buy whatever home that we want.
Thank you, Eric. I couldn't have done it without your support, though.
Nope, it was all you. You're just a wizard at playing the stock market. It's almost like you're psychic or something. We should call my parents and rub your success in my mother's face.
No, please don't do that. She'll just find a different reason to pick on me. Honestly, your mom just hates me. It is what it is. It felt terrible admitting that I would never be liked by my future mother-in-law, but I couldn't avoid it. She just refused to ever see me as a good match for her son. The one thing that I did request was that we pick a date and make plans for a wedding. With my investing skills, I earned enough money to completely cover the cost of the wedding, while still putting money aside for our future house as well. At the wedding, Eric's mother stared daggers at me the entire time and refused to say anything to me. Few months after our wedding, we bought our dream home and moved into it. It was such an amazing house, and it was close to Eric's job. I had an office built inside the library of the home, and I kept investing. We would eventually need more money to cover the costs of the children that we would have, as well as their schooling. Between the money I earned and Eric's salary, we were living quite comfortably. That is, until tragedy struck. I would never have guessed that I would become a widow at the age of 31. But sure enough, Eric was driving home from work one day, and a drunk driver got into a head-on collision with him. The accident was so terrible that both men died instantly. I was so furious. Not only had this stranger killed my husband, but he died, which meant that he wouldn't face any judgment for his crime. It was so infuriating. What made matters worse is that no sooner had my husband was buried and gone, did my mother-in-law begin coming around. At first, I thought maybe tragedy had made her see the light, and that she was coming around to make sure that I was okay. But of course, that wasn't the case. She will always come around and bully me, saying she wants all her son's property. Then one day she came.
Well, congratulations. Looks like you got what you wanted. My son is dead and you inherited everything, including this house that he paid for. I guess it must feel really good to be a freeloader and never have to work hard for anything.
Oh, will you shove it up your ass? I earned the money that paid for this house. My husband made good money, but it was my skills that paid for this house.
I don't believe you. You're lying and I'll make you regret it.
Before I even knew what was going on, she rushed towards me and put a cloth up to my face. The second that I began to feel loopy, I knew that she had doused the cloth with chloroform. I couldn't stay awake, and I fell asleep. When I woke up, I was tied up in the back of a moving car. Eventually, I felt the car stop, and Eric's mother opened the trunk and dragged me out of it and into what looked like an abandoned cabin.
There. Now I'll leave you here to rot while I head back and reclaim my son's house. I always knew that you were useless. I'm only sorry that my son never saw it and died before he could move on and find someone worthy of how amazing he was.
Enough. Your son loved me, and I was a great wife to him. I was never a freeloader. In fact, I made more money than him, and I not only paid completely for our wedding, but also for our house too. He made good money, but I was the breadwinner. Why can't you just accept that I loved your son, and he loved me?
You don't have to keep lying. I'm going to leave you out here to starve to death. It will be slow and painful, and once I know you are dead, I will bury you out here, and no one will ever know what happened to you.
And with that, she left me tied up in the cabin. For 2 solid days, I struggled to free myself from my bonds, and every time I heard any noises outside, I would scream and hope that it was a hiker or a hunter. By the time that the 3rd day rolled around, I was losing hope and I began to cry when I heard a car pull up outside. I instantly began to scream, and seconds later, Eric's father burst into the cabin and untied me. As it turned out, his wife had told him that I had run off with all of Eric's money since he was dead. He had found it rather odd that I would leave after the funeral if that had been my intentions, but also that I wouldn't sell the house but leave it behind. He instantly knew that something weird was going on, and he began to look for me. At first, he checked in with all my friends and family, but then he decided on a hunch to check his wife's old family cabin, and that was when he found me. I thanked him so much, and the two of us drove back to my home where we found my mother-in-law giving a statement to the police. She was filing for a missing persons report and claiming that I had skipped town. As soon as I saw her, I attacked her and dug my nails into her face. She screamed out in pain and fear, and it took 2 police officers to pull me off of her in spite of the fact that I was weak from days without food or water. Once they pulled me off, I told the police what she had done, which of course she denied. But then my father-in-law stepped up and told them that it was all true. After they heard his statement, they immediately arrested her and dragged her away. The next couple of weeks were a bit of a blur as it took me a while to recover from the ordeal. Between the days without food and having only lost my husband a short time before that, I was a mess. However, in spite of that, my mother-in-law was sentenced to 20 years in prison. As if that wasn't enough, her husband divorced her and told her that she had disgraced their son's memory by behaving like a crazy person. From what I hear, she gets into fights regularly in prison and is hated. If she manages to survive for the next 20 years in prison, I would be surprised. As for my father-in-law, well, he was pretty broken up about what had happened, but he did eventually recover, and I put my skills to good use and helped him out by tripling the amount of money he had in his retirement fund, helping him ensure that he would have whatever money he would ever need to stay happy, healthy, and comfortable. It was the least I could do. After all, he did save my life. And me? Well, it's taken me some time to process everything that happened, but I think I'm ready to get out there and start dating again. I don't know if I'll find anyone as amazing as my husband, but I know that he wouldn't want me to be alone. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe and leave a comment down below saying I subscribed, and we will try our best to reply to your comment.
How dare you sit there and expect me to clean the house?
What? But my husband employed you as a maid.
Because he's stupid. Get your ass up and clean the whole place.
My wife paused what she was busy with and quietly began cleaning the house while my mom and the maid conversed in the living room. After my wife was done cleaning, they asked her to also prepare food for them, which they abandoned after she served them. Hello there. My name is Sam, and I'm 30 years old. I've been married to my wife, Susan, for nearly 2 years, but a few months back, things weren't going so smoothly. I will explain. I met Susan at a cafe. I'm a huge coffee lover. Although I'm great at preparing it myself, I love to visit cafes to get enough of the cozy scent. On the day I met Susan, I decided to request a special type of coffee. We were both at the counter.
Wow, you know it? I thought I was the only one who bought it here.
Oh, sorry to disappoint you, but you might have to share with me.
Oh, it's fine. To know that, you must be deeply into coffee.
Yes, I am. I bet you are too. You're right. After we got our coffee, we both went to a table together where we discussed more. I found her to be very interesting. Not only coffee, we also shared many similar interests. We became friends from there. On the day I took her to introduce her to my mom, she made her feel so uncomfortable.
I hope you're not one of those career ladies.
I am, ma'am. I'm a lawyer by profession. Is there a problem?
Yes, you have to stop your job before marrying my son.
What? Why, Mother?
A woman isn't meant to work. She has to stay home, birth children, and look after them.
I felt embarrassed by my mom's behavior. Angrily, I took Susan and we left the house. I'm sorry for my mom's behavior. Ignore her words, please.
It's fine, Sam. I know her mentality is wrong. I'm not bothered.
I was relieved. We went ahead with the wedding preparation, and our wedding turned out to be a grand and enjoyable one. However, 1 week after we returned from our honeymoon, my mom suddenly showed up at our house. Mother, what are you doing here?
I've sold my house to pay up debts, so I'm going to be living with you both.
What? That's going to make my wife uncomfortable. We're newlyweds, for God's sake. My wife, hearing the noise, walked out of the room and came to us. She greeted my mom politely, but was ignored.
What's wrong, honey?
Mom has sold her house and wants to live with us permanently. Susan let out a heavy sigh of frustration.
It's fine, honey. She has nowhere else to go. Let her in. We'll manage.
Hearing that, my mom brushed off Susan and walked in.
So, if she hadn't permitted you, you wouldn't let me in. I'm ashamed to call you my son. You should have been born a woman or never even have been born.
Susan asked me to ignore her and walked me to my room. From then on, my home had never been peaceful. Every day, I would return home to meet my wife in tears. And every time I met her crying, my mom was the reason.
Mother told me to go kill myself. She brought me a knife and asked me to stab myself for choosing to be a career woman instead of a housewife.
Once, I returned home to meet my wife with a broken arm and ankle.
Mother pushed me down the stairs on my way to the hearing I had today. I arrived late because I had to visit the hospital to get treated and got disciplined.
I was boiling with rage. I wanted to go confront my mother, but Susan stopped me. She didn't want me fighting my mom over her. I let it slide. 2 weeks later, Susan had an important case at the court. I knew she'd be so stressed when she got back, so I decided to take a permission to be absent from work that day. Luckily, it was granted. Early that morning, I woke up and prepared breakfast for my wife. While at it, my mom walked into the kitchen.
What? You're cooking for a woman? I can't believe this.
There's nothing wrong with this, Mother. I used to cook for you.
That's different, you moron. I'm your mother, and that woman is only just your wife.
Well, I love and care for her too. I'm going to cook for my wife and do everything to make her happy, okay? My wife ran into the kitchen.
What's happening?
Get lost, you fool. Don't you dare meddle in my son and I discussing.
Talk to my wife respectfully, Mother. Susan quickly held me and calmed me down. She tried to finish up the breakfast, but I refused. Right in front of my raging mother, I finished it up and served my wife. Afterward, she left. Before she returned home, I got dinner ready, still against my mother's wish. A week later, I had to travel urgently. My mother got the chance to pour out all her aggression on my wife.
Hey, idiot! Drop me off at the spa before going to meet your criminals.
They're humans, Mother. You shouldn't talk down on them like that. Also, I can't drop you off, I'm sorry. I have to be at the court in 10 minutes.
Do I look like I care about what you just spilled out? You're either dropping me off at the spa first or stay home all day.
But Mother, the spa is an hour's drive away from here. I can't take you and you know that. Please let me take you tomorrow.
No! You're either taking me today or we're both gonna stay at home. And that's final.
True to her words, my mom didn't let Susan leave the house. Luckily, she had the key to a secret exit. My wife had to leave from there. As if that wasn't enough, while I was still away, she brought her friend home to ridicule my wife.
Can you imagine? She put her career over her marriage.
No, Mother. I value my marriage, but I can't leave my job. Sam wants me to work, too.
No, he doesn't. You forced my son to agree.
How could you let Sam get married to a woman like her? My son always obeys me.
I wish my son was like yours. Sam stopped listening to me ever since he got married to this stupid lady.
Can she even do any household chores? She looks so weak.
Susan surely did the chores whenever I was away, and when we're both home, we do it together. That day, my mom and her friend put her through so much stress. They made her clean the whole house, and when she was done, they walked around the house with shoes they'd intentionally gotten dirty. My wife had to clean the whole place 4 times. As if that wasn't enough, my mom asked her to prepare some food for them to prove she was a good housewife. However, after serving the meal to them, both women complained that it wasn't delicious and emptied their bowls on Susan's body. The next day, my mom spilled a cup of steaming hot coffee on my wife's legs and pretended that it was an accident. After that, she hid Susan's car keys to stop her from attending an important court hearing where she was the lawyer of the accused. When she finally managed to get to the court by public transport, she realized that some of the documents containing the evidence of her client being truthful had disappeared. She burst into tears right there, knowing it was my mom who did it. Luckily, they permitted her to rush back home to get them. She met the documents soaked in water, but fortunately, they weren't torn. She took them to the court like that. When I returned home and my wife informed me, I was disappointed. I confronted my mother, and her reply was a shock to me.
I was a full-time housewife, she should be too. I didn't get an education, but I'm thriving in my son's house. She doesn't need a job. Once she drops her career and forgets about it, I'll see her as my daughter-in-law.
She's my wife, Mother. I love that she's a career woman. No matter how many times I tried to warn her to stop abusing my wife, she refused to listen. One day, I returned home to meet her and her friend beating my wife up. I quickly stepped in and pulled her away. How dare you both? What has she done to you? You're seriously getting on my nerves, Mother.
I feel bad for your mother having a weak son like you. How could you talk back at your mother over a woman you barely met 3 years ago?
I'm sorry, but you've got to shut up. Your son got married to a black woman against your wish, you racist. How dare you talk down on me? This is the last time I'm warning you both. Let my wife and I be. And I could see how shocked they were at my outburst, but I didn't care. My work needed me to move to Germany in 2 months. Susan had always told me about how she wanted to quit being a lawyer to owning a cafe, so I was planning to make that a reality for her. I needed to travel once more to complete the cafe, but I couldn't leave Susan alone with my mom. So I had a temporary maid come over. She was an elderly woman, so I thought she'd be occupied with my mom, and that would make her forget about Susan. However, it seemed like I'd made a mistake.
How dare you sit there and expect me to clean the house?
What? But my husband employed you as a maid.
Because he's stupid. Get your ass up and clean the whole place.
My wife paused what she was busy with and quietly began cleaning the house while my mom and the maid conversed in the living room. After my wife was done cleaning, they asked her to also prepare food for them, which they abandoned after she served them. When I returned home, my wife told me everything in tears. She was tired and was requesting me to talk to my mom. I'd had enough. Right there, first thing I did was kick the maid out of the house with $0. Then I told my wife my next plan. I pleaded with her to endure my mother's behavior for 1 more month. She agreed. One day, a month later, Susan and I wheeled out our boxes. My mom was surprised seeing us.
Where are you both off to?
My wife and I are leaving to start our lives afresh in another country. You know, Mother, I decided to be quiet because I respect you, but I need to make you realize something. I recall how you and Father used to fight regularly before he died. You were a dirty, lazy, and irresponsible wife who only wanted to sit home all day, not doing anything. Father was never in support of you being a housewife, and when he died, you made me get a job at my young age so as to feed you. My wife will never be like you. She's a responsible woman who loves to work and support her family. She's also been kind enough to take in all of your abuse. I wanted you to suffer in jail, but she begged on your behalf. This house has been sold, alongside everything in it. You have only 3 days to leave. In case you haven't heard, your friend's son has abandoned his mother for being racist toward his wife. You could find her and roam on the streets with her. From today, you're no more my mother. I hope you don't take this mentality of yours into your next life. Bye. She cried and begged us, but we left. She had never worked before. Life would be hard for her, but do I care? Of course not. My wife and I are happy and at peace, and that's all that matters. Right? My mom has been sending me messages begging me to forgive her. She explained to me how she now works in a warehouse and she hates her job because she carries packages and her back hurts, but I didn't reply. Do you think I was harsh towards her? Leave a comment down below. Oh, you brought the colored man again? I thought you'd have given up. You're quite tough.
I hope you don't expect to eat any food today. I have nothing to waste on you.
There's an exception. If you could do the monkey dance, we can change our minds about feeding you and maybe even get you a banana. All 3 of them burst into laughter. I got angry. Hi, my name's Alex, and I'm from Cameroon, but moved to Canada at the age of 2, and I've lived here ever since. I met Ariel during college, when we were still only young adults. We started as acquaintances, often discussing our studies. Gradually, these talks turned into friendship. As our friendship grew, so did my feelings for her. It wasn't sudden, it was a slow realization that Ariel was more than just a friend. There came a point when I couldn't ignore my feelings anymore. Telling her how I felt was nerve-wracking. I didn't want to risk our friendship, but I eventually gathered the courage to confess. Ariel's reaction was a mix of surprise and happiness, and I felt a wave of relief wash over me as she told me she felt the same. We both began dating, and dare I say, I discovered even more peculiar things about Ariel. Our relationship continued even after we finished college. By then, I was 24 and she was 23. We both got good jobs and were doing well for ourselves. I introduced her to my parents as my girlfriend, and they were pleased to meet her.
Alex has never brought any girl home to us. I'm so glad to meet you. You're so beautiful.
Surprisingly, my sisters who didn't like to be close to white people after some bad experiences with a few, liked Ariel too. I was happy to see her smiling with them. It made my love for her to grow even more. I wanted to propose to her, but I decided to wait until I'd had enough money before doing so. Luckily, the next year, the manager at the company where I worked gave me a promotion, and that meant an increase in pay. I was elated. 3 months later, I decided that I was ready to get married to Ariel. I hadn't met her parents yet, and she'd also not talked about them before. I decided to wait until after the proposal before asking to meet them. It didn't take long before I finally proposed to her. Ariel was so happy that she bursted into tears. I nearly cried too. I put the ring on her after the proposal and felt myself take a huge step. A few weeks after the proposal, I asked to meet her parents. Ariel didn't disagree. In fact, she was quite pissed that I'd taken so long to ask. I was nervous as the day of me meeting them began to draw close. Eventually, the day came, and Ariel and I went together. Unfortunately for me, her parents were the complete opposite of what I expected. Both were clear racists. Ariel's parents greeted us with forced politeness that barely concealed their underlying discomfort.
So do you work or do you feed from my daughter's pockets? I know that how you all black men are.
I felt uncomfortable by the question. I'd never received anything from Ariel. I never asked, and she never even tried to give. I wasn't complaining. I was fine with being the giver. I was about to speak, but Ariel beat me to it.
We share the bills, Mom. He has a job.
I was shocked. Ariel had never shared anything with me. I was about to speak again when her father butt in.
I've heard black people don't use cologne. Judging by your smell, I'm sure you don't too. How do you think you can marry our daughter?
Again, before I could respond, her mom cleared her throat and stood up, Ariel following after her immediately. I remained seated in the living room with her dad, too scared to say anything because of the deady glare he was giving me. Ariel's mother had prepared a quick meal and set the table. She called on me and her husband to the table. I saw Ariel already seated beside her mother.
I hope you know how to eat that. It's not the usual black and dirty food that you're used to.
I was offended by her words. How could she insult black food? I'm sorry, ma'am. Please don't speak about black food that way. I'm fine if you insult me, but please don't insult my culture.
Oh, you have a culture? I thought all you do is to have black skin and look dirty.
I turned to Ariel, expecting her to at least say something, but she didn't. Instead, she laughed, somehow finding what her mother said to be funny. Throughout the evening, I remained composed. Outwardly, though inwardly, I was boiling and felt disappointed. After dinner, both Ariel's father and mother continued taunting me, especially saying annoying things about my skin color. Ariel wasn't any better. She would either laugh or be silent. Leaving their home that night, I couldn't shake off the unease that had settled within me. Ariel visited me the next day and acted like nothing happened. I'd expected an apology or something from her, but got nothing. In fact, she'd visited me only because she wanted to ask for money. From then on, I noticed how Ariel began to demand money from me. She wouldn't go a week without taking money from me at least thrice. I was having to take out of my savings to satisfy her wants. We never spoke about her family again. She didn't even bring up conversations on how we should have our wedding. It felt as though she was fine with us being just engaged. Despite what her parents had done, I wanted to mend things with them. So, I asked to see them again. Ariel agreed. Unfortunately, they were unapologetic about their actions.
Oh, you brought the colored man again? I thought you'd have given up. You're quite tough.
I hope you don't expect to eat any food today. I have nothing to waste on you.
There's an exception. If you could do the monkey dance, we can change our minds about feeding you and maybe even get you a banana.
All three of them burst into laughter. I got angry and lashed out at them. Excuse me? I'm your daughter's fiancé, for crying out loud. I'm also human. Just because I have black skin doesn't mean you have the right to speak to me like this. I'd thought they'd apologize or maybe stop their unfair words, but what I didn't expect was a slap from her father.
How dare you, a low-life black man, come into my house to yell at my family? Who gave you that authority? Have you gone crazy?
Alex, these are my parents. How can you be so disrespectful to them? I've been nothing but respectful to yours.
I was even more shocked by Ariel defending her parents. She was present when they were saying all those degrading words to me. She never defended me. And now, she was mad at me for giving her parents a taste of their own medicine. I couldn't take it anymore. I was going to leave, but I decided to give them a piece of my mind one more time. You heard them, Ariel. You listened to them disrespect me and my culture. You saw your dad slap me, and yet you defend them? You all are the same. I regret even thinking you were different, Ariel. Well, I'd honestly thought I could just walk away after that, but her dad wasn't going to let that happen. The man pulled me back and threw me on the floor. He sat on top of me and began punching and slapping me. Ariel and her mom watched how he beat me up mercilessly. When he was done, I was thrown out of their house. Fortunately for me, one of their neighbors helped me to the hospital. You'd have thought it ended there, and we called off the engagement. Unfortunately, Ariel refused to let that happen. 2 weeks later, she was at my office again, asking for money. I refused to give it to her. She tried all she could, but I refused. Angrily, she slapped me before storming out of my office. The next day, I got visitors right as I was leaving my house. I was trying to record a video of myself. So, while my friend stood away opposite us, Ariel and her parents showed up. I was beaten up badly for refusing to give their daughter the money she asked for. Apparently, she wanted to change her car and needed money. Afterward, they took my phone and transferred all the $30,000 I had as my savings. I kept begging and crying, but they didn't listen until they'd taken all my money and left me in bruises. Unknown to them, I had a small recording mic on, and my friend recorded everything that happened. As he took me to a hospital, he posted the video to expose Ariel and her parents. I had no idea about it until the next day, where he showed me the amount of engagement the post already had. And thousands of people had viewed it, and thousands had commented, all against Ariel and her father. I needed to get justice for what they did to me. I also wanted to get my money back. So, once I was able to sit up properly, I made a video to explain what had transpired between us, starting from the first time I met them. Again, it blew up. People were against Ariel and her parents for being racists. Some called her father an evil man for beating me up, and the family were called thieves for taking my money forcefully. Hashtags began flying, everyone demanding for my money to be returned with an apology and more money as a better compensation. It didn't take long before Ariel called me.
Take down that video, Alex. You're destroying our lives. What did my parents do that no one else hasn't done before?
And then I got to know that Ariel and her parents were getting all sorts of punishment from people everywhere they went. People who recognized them would sometimes throw eggs at them, as well as other disgusting things. But that was even little compared to what her family did to me. I'm never taking it down. You watched your parents talk down on me, beat me up, and even take my money. You'll have to apologize publicly to make me stop. She never did. Instead, she and her dad broke into my house 2 nights later to try stealing my phone so they could take down the video. I caught them, but I didn't wake up while they were still in my room. Once they took my phone and left my room, I grabbed my stunt gun from my wardrobe and went after them. I teased Ariel's father, causing him to fall down. Ariel was shocked to see me with a gun. "Get on your knees now!" Out of fear, she went on her knees. Her father was still writhing in pains on the floor.
Forgive us, please. Don't shoot. We're going to leave and never disturb you again. Please forgive us.
Yes, please. If you let us go, I swear to you, we'll never bother you again. Shut up, both of you. Forgiveness? Never. I'll never forgive you both, or let either of you go. I knew I needed to tie them down before calling the police, so I gave Ariel a punch, knocking her out. I quickly fetched a rope and tied her and her father together. After that, I took a picture of them with their masks still covering half of their faces. Then I removed the masks and took another picture, calling the cops right after. When they came, Ariel and her father were arrested and taken away. I posted the pictures online, and the hatred for the family increased even more. In court, I got my money back and even $10,000 extra, which was all Ariel and her family had as their savings. Both she and her dad were jailed for their crimes. They were to each spend 15 years there. Her mother, trying to burn down my house 2 weeks later while I wasn't home, accidentally trapped herself inside and burnt together with the house. Ariel and her father were absolutely broken and disappointed when they heard the news. People online were kind enough to get me a new and better house. While Ariel and her dad suffered in jail, I found myself a better white lady 2 years later, kind and very much unlike Ariel. I found peace and forgot all about Ariel. My fiance and I are expecting twins, and I'll make sure to send Ariel and her dad a picture of our family. Thanks for watching. Be sure to subscribe and leave a comment down below saying, "I subscribed," and we will try our best to reply to your comment. On the day he got home, I put the drug in his tea and made him drink it all. We left soon after and waited for it to begin working. We knew it would be like 4 hours later. The CCTV was connected to my phone, so I could watch and listen to everything happening at his house. 4 hours later, I began watching it. My dad had passed out in the living room. Linda tried to wake him up by slapping him, which was very surprising, but he didn't budge. Rather than call out for help, Linda began jumping excitedly. After her little celebration, she called someone on a video call. It was a man.
The old fool is dead, baby. We're rich.
She'd been deceived into believing that my dad is dead, and he changed his will. When my dad introduced Linda to us as his girlfriend, we all thought it was one of his silly pranks. My name is Sean, and my dad is 72 years old. My siblings and I are all grown and even married. My 2 older siblings already have kids, while my wife and I are still preparing for childbearing. My dad is a rich man. He and my late mother had formed 2 beverage-producing companies and grew them tirelessly. Now, our brands are famous for our products. My mom died 10 years ago, and my dad didn't remarry. When he suddenly invited us all over and introduced us to Linda, you can imagine our shock. That day, when he called us all, we thought it was for his usual advice sessions. And when we saw Linda, I thought he'd taken a new homeworker.
This is Linda, my new girlfriend. I'll love it if you all respect her the way you respect me. No one has shown any interest in me since your mother's death, but Linda did. I'm happy with her.
Was I angry? Kind of. I mean, all of a sudden? How did they even meet? When did it all happen? Were they even in love? Does she even love you?
She loves me. We've been together for a month, and I can't say how happy I've been. She's the best thing that has happened to me after your mother, and she feels the same. Right, baby?
I frowned as Linda nodded. She looked so young to suddenly be in love with my old father. How old are you? I was shocked when she revealed that she was only 22. How possible? A young lady of 22 would only be with a man as old as my dad for one reason: his money. No doubt, this lady was there for my father's wealth.
Dad, you have to break up with her. She's too young. How can you think she's in love with you? I'm 50, Dad. She's old enough to be your granddaughter.
I agree with her, Dad. This is wrong in all ways. And you, young lady, I put it to you that there's no way you're in love with my father.
I understand that it's hard for you guys to believe because I'm really young. But believe me, I do like your dad. A whole lot, in fact. I've never been in a relationship because I've never been attracted to young men. Your dad is the first man I've been with, and I've not regretted a single day spent with him. I love him.
Yeah, she was good with her words. I'll give her that. She deceived us without even doing much. Just her words were enough to break our walls. That day, we stayed at my dad's house until evening. Linda had made us delicious food and even packed some to take home for my sister, who couldn't have enough of the food. She was just so good and humble. After meeting Linda twice more, we were convinced that she was truly in love with our dad. My dad would call me nearly every evening to tell us about the fun he had with Linda. She would help him with cooking, his laundry, and even washing up. They also went out on dates. It reminded me of how happy my dad used to be when my mom was alive, and I felt as though my mom had come back into our lives in the form of Linda. My siblings and I grew to love her. I mean, she was lovable. I have a restaurant which wasn't so big then, but Linda would come often to help me with certain things there. She also visited my older siblings sometimes to help with their kids. After about 4 months, they got married. My dad had been so excited when he invited us over to tell us about his engagement. It was quite strange though. Linda had asked him to marry her by herself. According to my dad, she'd taken him out on a date at a restaurant, and while they were eating, she surprisingly pulled out a ring and asked him to marry her.
But why? That should have been the other way around. Why would she do that? It's only been like 6 months?
Well, she said she was scared I might not want to get married to her because she's young. She did it herself to prove that she was ready for marriage. I think it's cute and thoughtful.
Honestly, I thought the same too. Truly, she might have thought my dad would never marry her due to the age gap. Proposing to him by herself only meant that she was truly ready. That's what I'd thought. So, I supported her. My siblings also seemed to reason like me. We all agreed to their marriage. It's not like it wouldn't have happened if we disagreed. While preparing for the wedding, I realized that Linda was demanding a court wedding instead of the usual church one. I refused. My siblings refused. We thought it would be too much to wed at the church. My dad was confused. As much as he wanted to give her the court wedding she wanted, he also didn't like the thought of it. It was hard, but we were eventually able to convince Linda against the court wedding. She'd clearly not wanted to give it up, but we had to force her. On the wedding day, Linda didn't feel so excited. We were fooled into thinking that she was having a headache, so we felt bad for her. My sister has to comfort and be close to her throughout the day. After the wedding, life with Linda and my dad began. The first 2 months, neither my siblings nor I visited our dad. We wanted him to have all the fun he wanted with his new wife, without knowing that we were making a silly mistake. I didn't visit my dad until 3 months later, and when I saw him, I noticed the difference in his behavior. He was quieter than usual and had lost some weight. When I asked if he was okay, he lied that he was and smiled at me. But I know my dad too well. I could see that his smile didn't get to his eyes. There was surely something going on. When Linda showed up in the living room, I caught my dad as he flinched. I frowned. Linda greeted me with cheerful smiles before sitting down and resting her head on my dad's shoulder. We talked for a while before it was time for me to leave. On my way out, I asked Linda to go with me. We talked about my dad's issue. Is my dad okay? He looks different, and his behavior is strange. What's going on? I watched how her face fell. She looked down on the floor.
Your dad isn't making me happy, Sean. Ever since we got married, he's been getting distant. He pushes me away sometimes. On some nights, he sends me out of the room.
What?
Yes. Can you believe it? I'm a young girl, and I'm his wife. I deserve his attention, but it's like he doesn't love me. I'm so sad, Sean.
I felt so bad for her and promised to talk to my dad. She thanked me before going back in. The next time I visited my dad, he was even worse. This time, he barely even said any words to me. I grew so frustrated that I angrily left his house. On my way, my dad's lawyer called me. He told me that my dad called him regarding a change in his will. He wanted to give everything to Linda. That was unexpected. I decided to tell my siblings. Together, we visited my dad again 4 days later. When we got there, we found the house empty. I went up to my dad's room and met him sprawled on the floor. I quickly shouted for my siblings' help. We immediately took him to the hospital. When Linda came, I was surprised at her words.
Is he dead? No, he can't die now. Has he changed his will yet? He can't die!
My father is not dead. What the hell are you saying?
She immediately became cold as ice. She scratched her head and began stammering.
Well, he said he had some changes to do. I was just scared that he didn't get to do that before he died. What happened to my husband?
I was suspicious of her. Regardless of the reason, why would she suddenly assume his death and care only about his will? When my dad woke up, he began crying. We comforted him and tried to find the reason for his tears, but he didn't tell us. Even more, he asked Linda to leave the room. I just knew something was wrong. When I told my siblings about my suspicion, they agreed with me. It seemed as though our dad was being abused by his new wife. We also suspected her of wanting his wealth. Her worrying about the will was proof. Also, my dad wouldn't attempt to change his will like that, if not forced to.
She also proposed marriage to Dad first. It's strange enough.
We decided to find out the truth. We knew my dad would never tell us, so we decided to do it our own way. Before leaving the hospital, we spoke to the doctor about our plan. He was our family doctor, so we trusted him. He gave us a drug that can make a person sleep for a whole day and be confused as dead. We also made Linda stay at the hospital with my dad for 2 whole days while we fixed CCTV cameras in his house. On the day he got home, I put the drug in his tea and made him drink it all. We left soon after and waited for it to begin working. We knew it would be like 4 hours later. The CCTV was connected to my phone, so I could watch and listen to everything happening at his house. 4 hours later, I began watching it. My dad had passed out in the living room. Linda tried to wake him up by slapping him, which was very surprising, but he didn't budge. Rather than call out for help, Linda began jumping excitedly. After her little celebration, she called someone on a video call. It was a man.
The old fool is dead, baby. We're rich.
She'd been deceived into believing that my dad is dead, and he changed his will. Well, after the lawyer called me, Linda had visited him. The lawyer lied to her that my dad had changed his will. He'd been our lawyer for a long time, so he knew something was up. When he told me, I was so thankful to him. While Linda was celebrating with whoever was on the phone, I contacted the police as well as my siblings. She was taken aback when we suddenly burst into the house. She tried to escape, but it was a useless attempt. The cops handcuffed and took her straight to the station. It was discovered there that she and her boyfriend, who was 22, had planned to scam my dad. The boy was also arrested. They were both taken to court, where my dad divorced her. Upon learning that Linda had been arrested, my dad confessed to us that she had been abusing him. He also said that he would never date or marry anyone ever again. He was disappointed in himself, but happy that we had saved him. She was charged with emotional and physical abuse, as well as fraud. She got 25 years imprisonment, while her boyfriend got 15 for being an accomplice. She was in so much tears while being pulled away. She kept crying and apologizing to us. Her parents were also in tears. Linda had ran away from home, so they'd thought she went missing. We felt bad for them, but she had to be punished. She was nothing but a gold digger. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe and leave a comment down below saying I subscribed, and we will try our best to reply to your comment.